So I'm delighted to welcome Mark Pratt from the AI Pros to the Business of AI podcast. So, Mark, great to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting me on. Great to be here.
Well, I'm really interested to find out more about what you do. We've had a bit of a pre-chat, so I wonder whether you can actually sort of explain to our audience a bit about your background and what the AI Pros does.
Sure. Okay. Well, I was 48 the other day, and I started programming computers when I was 6. So I've now got 42 years of experience, which is hence the sort of grey bit starting to creep in at the side there. But the first part of my career, I kind of started off in software development, kind of did that at university and worked for companies like IBM and did quite a lot of web development early doors. And then as I started leading development teams, I fell into project management, which kind of forms the vast majority of my career. As I started taking it more seriously, I ran bigger and bigger programs and culminated in huge sort of technology implementations for banks. Huge budget, £780 million, 1,000 people working for me. Really, really sort of big transformation projects. And following that part of my career, I've always kind of been an entrepreneur at heart, and I started a business called Project Partners, which is a kind of project management and business transformation consultancy, focused predominantly in the financial services sector, which is kind of where most of my experience has been gained. But then also we expanded into other industries like retail and so on. And on that journey, kind of more latterly in the last couple of years, as we started to implement AI for ourselves in our own business and start to develop our own tooling, with AI APIs, we realized kind of that's really where our passion lies. And also with small business and, sort of more away from larger business, we realized that's where our passion lies, helping small businesses leverage these sorts of technologies to really start to kind of get a bit of an unfair advantage for themselves. And so that's where we kind of pivoted more recently, founded the AI Pros as a separate entity from the kind of the Project Partners business. I'm pushing forward on that right now, trying to help small business implement AI into themselves.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for giving us that background. And in terms of what you've learned from those big business transformations, I'd be really keen to hear how that applies. And just from my own experience, I know that one of the challenges you often find with bigger businesses is trying to change the mindset of the teams, the leadership, and also sort of the managers. And part of that change in mindset is just getting people to be a bit more sort of entrepreneurial, to be a bit more curious, humble, test and learn, use data, all of those sort of things. So I wonder whether you've gone from one extreme, from those huge corporations you mentioned, and now you're also working with SMEs. How have you found the change in mindset, stepping from one of those worlds into the other?
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, and I think this is why I've gone in this direction. So just to kind of address the first part of your question there, what a staggering point in kind of the world of like large project implementation is that 70% of projects fail. And I think that's like really quite embarrassing. If you're a professional, project delivery person from whatever sort of job title you've got, 70% of the work that occurs fails, and that failure measured across 3 metrics: time, cost, or quality. So either the original intention of the project was to deliver a thing within a time, within a budget. 70% of projects that start don't achieve all 3 of those aims. So it's pretty embarrassing, really, for such a huge multi-trillion-dollar industry. And we did some analysis on that, and there's lots of different thinking around why these sorts of things happen. And where we boiled down to was very few organizations start with why. They start typically with a solution and not with a problem. And there's a chap that listeners might be familiar with called Simon Sinek, who wrote a book called Start With Why. We took a little bit of inspiration from that, and when we built our own project and change management framework to utilize within the Project Partners business, called the ABCDE way. The first part of the A, the aim, was around forming your hypothesis, and the why for a particular project. So we focus very heavily on starting with why, and we believe that most projects fail at that very first hurdle. The failure may not manifest until later in the project, but if you've not got a really strong why and a really strong North Star to kind of focus minds behind, the solution will change along the journey. A plan is only ever as good as your best guess, really. And you roll with the punches as you go, managing your risks and managing your milestones and everything else. But unless you've got a very clear why, a very clear North Star for people to coalesce behind, that I believe the project's running a high risk of failure. So that's certainly what I learned working for big business. And then flipping that to kind of smaller business, I've been a member of something called the Entrepreneur Circle for about the last 10 years, working with kind of fellow sort of small businesses. And the interesting thing about that is, the vast majority of the small business community have literally got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And so, they're far more willing to sort of take the sort of risks that larger corporations would procrastinate and govern to death while everybody else is moving fast around them. So yeah, that's kind of the really fascinating dichotomy in those two sort of environments.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think you're absolutely right. Smaller entrepreneurs are prepared to take the risks because there's so much focus on being able to grow. That's the lifeblood of any small business. But they do so in a way which is around testing and learning. I think that for me is the bit where they are prepared to take risks as long as they can get some data from it, and then as long as there's some learning from it, because they appreciate that that's the way they keep up with things. And in the world of AI, actually, that's really important because it's I'm going to say impossible to really keep up with all of the speed of change of all the many different elements of technology. So you have to be testing things out. And seeing what's going to be relevant for you. And I think that's part of this mindset shift, which ultimately was digital transformation that happened maybe 10 years ago. And the companies which have gone through that process now, who have that more agile mindset, are doing well. And AI is just a new challenge for them. Whereas the companies that haven't gone through that mindset shift, they're still struggling and trying to keep up. And I think that leads back to the thing you mentioned there about, the starting with why. This is, again, something which we've seen across many different organizations, that they rush into the solution, as you put it. And that's often because it comes from top down. It's a board or a CEO who's read something in the FT, or someone said to them, or one of their competitors has used quotation marks AI, and they just think, right, we've got to use AI, and they don't really understand what AI means, but they know they need to do something, so they tell their team to do it. And then, to your point, they're starting with the solution rather than actually thinking about what the problem is. And very often, the solution is not using something big and complicated like a Gen AI integration. It's actually something more mundane and more sort of day to day, which could be
absolutely right.
But I'd love to get your kind of perspective on that, and in particular any sort of case studies, because I know you're really in the weeds with implementing these kind of projects. So, what sort of examples do you have?
Yeah, we've got a really interesting example that we've just kind of gone live with the first phase of the project, and just about to implement the second phase as well, moving quite quickly. So one of my clients is an estate agency business based in the Midlands, 5 branches. Really interesting use case. So across those 5 branches, they're open whatever 8 till 6 most days, including Sundays. So pretty decent coverage in terms of availability of staff, but they still miss somewhere in the region of 1,800 calls per month across those 5 branches from, the phone, either the phones are engaged, people can't reach them in time, or out of hours. And so we started talking to them about the use of voice agents to kind of cover off those missed calls. They did have a human-based call center solution, overspill call center solution, message taking solution in place, but it's a pretty basic solution in terms of those people that were taking those failover calls were not connected into their systems and processes. And so it really was just taking a message and someone calling them back. And so what we've done is we've implemented using a few different kind of publicly available platforms, and then kind of glued them together with various different automation tools. Implemented an AI voice agent. First of all, we cloned the voice of one of the branch managers. Nice West Midlands accent, answers the phone, and kind of friendly local accent, so it's not a robotic sounding thing. Quite low latency, so there's still a touch of latency in there, but I'm sure that will improve as the technology improves. But so you get a warm welcome greeting straight away, and then you can kind of have a conversation with the AI. And in the first phase, the kind of the basic functionality is to still take that message, but with two improvements. One is that we've fed a huge amount of knowledge into the agent, so it can answer questions like opening hours and locations and things like this. And also, when the message is taken, crucially, that's pushed into their kind of estate agent CRM platform, so that the kind of the callback details are all there. The human call center just used to email them with the missed calls, and so it was pretty poor administratively. So that's kind of phase one. And phase two, which is the far more exciting phase, is now having hooked into their CRM. We've got the availability of the agents to kind of go and do a viewing of a property, for example, and we've also got the calendar of the vendor, so when they're available or that home is available to be viewed. And so we can actually offer, you can have a conversation, say, I'd like to view, number 10 the High Street, and the AI will respond and sort of tell you, well, you can, it's free on Wednesday at 10 a.m. or Thursday at 2 p.m. or that sort of dialogue. And then you can choose the booking window, and then the system will send you a text message to confirm the booking. And we plan to, right now, this is just used for kind of, as I say, failover when they're engaged or when it's out of hours. But the plan by phase 4 of the project is to make that the first point of call. So when we're very happy that 99% of use cases are covered and it's providing a great customer experience every time without too much drama, then we're actually going to turn it off to be the first port of call rather than the failover. So quite exciting, and that should be at that state before the end of this year.
Great. And just thinking about this, of the metrics which you're using to track success along the way, I wonder whether you could just kind of share how you set those metrics up. Because I think one of the biggest challenges with these types of projects is managing the customers' expectations and ultimately being able to demonstrate that you're delivering some ROI. So I'd be really interested to know, particularly as you had that phased approach, how you set out some metrics and then how you were able to demonstrate back to the client that you're getting ROI, presumably to unlock each phase.
Yeah, sure. So, let's just leave kind of the technology and everything to the side for a second. From those years and years of kind of project management, business analysis, building business cases, all of that kind of experience has kind of come to the fore now. And when we sit down with a client, we're not talking about technology or automation or AI. That's obviously kind of the interest point, and people are starting to get aware of what the capabilities of these systems and tools and processes might be. But we strip it back to the business process. What are the important metrics here to you as a business? In this particular instance, they have about 14 different types of calls that they would categorize, and against each one, we're able to kind of drill down and go, okay, well, a call for a viewing is worth X because a house sale is worth Y to the business, and therefore it takes on average 7 viewings to sell a property or whatever it might be, and therefore each viewing call is actually worth X hundred or £1,000, a big number against it. And so if we're missing 1,800 calls, we know around 80% of our calls are to book a viewing. You start to do the maths, and very, very quickly you can see that there's a huge missed potential there in terms of opportunity cost of ROI of missing those calls. And so by allowing at the first point of service an incoming client inquiry to result in a booked viewing there and then, this is going to add thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to their bottom line, basically. There's other metrics which are important as well. Time on the market is as a vendor has their property on the market longer, they start to kind of lose trust that the agent will be able to fulfill the transaction for them, and start to potentially look around. And depending on whether the property's been listed on a sort of no win, no fee basis or an upfront fee, there's potentially lost revenue if we don't reduce the time to sale. So by being able to service their customer as quickly as they want, we're able to kind of look at those metrics, and we take a baseline. So we know what those metrics were at the start of this experiment, because it is all one big experiment, although we are servicing customers in live, and we'll take those readings, and we do take those readings, I beg your pardon, on a weekly basis to see how those metrics are starting to trend. And already we can see that the number of viewings, the time to get the number of viewings in for a property is reducing. And so when you extrapolate that out across the portfolio, you start to see what an impact that might have. So, very quickly we've been able to demonstrate that, this is returning more than your investment, very, very quickly. There was also the cost, which has instantly been liberated of the outsourced call handling service. So that the cost of delivering our service is already around a third of the cost of delivering that human call center service. So, from multiple angles, we're already demonstrating fantastic ROI. And on top of that, a really exciting project that we're working on, which is really, really at the experimental edge of the phases. And this particular agent is the leading agent in the area that they operate, and they want to kind of maintain that sort of estate agent. They want to maintain that market position, and one of the things that they believe will help them maintain their market position is having 100% coverage of video walkthroughs of the properties that they have. But when to send an individual round with a video camera and do that nice kind of video shoot is the mechanics, the finances don't work for that particular thing. So we're just testing out now with indoor drone technology that will follow around the estate agent around the property. Using AI, will then edit the individual out of the shot. So you've just got the pure walkthrough of the property, and then again, using AI and image recognition, we'll then be able to voice over a walkthrough narrative. As we enter the living room here, we can see this and we can see that and we can see the other with subtitles and a nice AI voiceover that sounds human. And so, if we can get this working well, it's a lot more experimental, some of this technology, but if we can get this working well, that will enable the estate agents to have 100% coverage of video walkthroughs of their properties. So, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing those examples. They're great examples. What I really like as well is the process that you're talking about here, and the fact that technology is not secondary, but it's secondary to the point you made of getting understanding the problem properly.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. It probably makes a lot more sense when you come from that sort of big technology process space as well, because you've had to sort of really sort of deal with kind of actually getting the question right before you kind of try and rush to get the answer. And I think we've seen that so many times that companies, small and big, just race to try and come up with that solution. So what you've been outlining here is that's a process which is really important, which I think need to focus on again. The other part of what you've talked about is that sort of the leadership or the management team being very receptive when you can actually show that something is delivering. But I want to just drill there a bit and understand, when you're working with those management teams and you're starting to show them some results, how does that affect their willingness to then adopt and to make more budget available for further investments? Is it almost that you start off having to prove it, and then once you've proved it, then they're sort of all over it, or
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Typically, clients are presenting in a couple of ways at the moment. Are either presenting as hugely enthusiastic and eager to jump on the AI bus, basically, or they're presenting as skeptical. And really, because of the kind of really overwhelming demand for people interested in doing something with it, we're kind of parking the skeptical people just now. They're the late adopters. They're the laggards. They can, we'll follow up with them later. We keep in touch with them through, our email newsletter and regular catch-ups and so on. But we'll leave the laggards just to one side for a minute. We'll focus on the people that really want to go ahead, and then they fall into two camps. There's the camp that know that unless they start adopting some of these new technologies, they're scared that in some way, shape or form will mean that their business gets left behind. And they just want to know what the art of the possible is. And they want, they're looking for advice and us to tell them where AI, potentially automation, data, technology, which majority of small business owners have a reasonably, low level of understanding about the difference between some of those terms. I'm finding, which is fine. They're focusing every day on running their business. They haven't got time to work out all this stuff. So there's a little bit of education there. Or people present with a particular use case where they've done a little bit of research and they know that if we could just get this AI'd or automated or technology applied to this particular part of the business, then that would be really worth something to us. So they're the two sort of camps that people are falling into. If they fall into the former camp, the what can AI do for us camp, we sit down with them, we have a workshop, and we look across the different facets of their business, the different organizational units. So even a small business has somebody, or some part of somebody's job is sales, somebody or some part of somebody's job is marketing, operations, finance, HR, fulfillment, customer service. All businesses have all of these things, even if, even a smaller business, sometimes people wear multiple hats. And so we understand what their processes are across those things. And then we ask them simple questions around, well, what's stopping you getting from where you want to be? What are your constraints? What goals are you not achieving? Is it at that early end of the customer life cycle? Is it in marketing, lead generation? Is it more on the sales side? Is it in conversion? Is it in follow up? Is it in, is the problem there? Is it in, have we got the demand and we're signing it up, or is it on onboarding? We can't kind of onboard these people quickly enough. Is it in fulfillment? Are we, is our mouth writing checks our body can't cash, or whatever the expression is, that and at some point along that continuum, is it in customer service? People are buying and fulfilling themselves, or whatever your product or service might be, but then the customer service is weak and attrition is happening at that end. Some part of your business, especially when you're smaller, is not where you want it to be, for sure, maybe multiple parts. So let's focus in on the area that is holding you back, and let's unlock that by deeply understanding what the process is. One of the questions I ask people is, if you had 100 hours to focus just on winning one new client, could you do it? Okay, and oftentimes the answer is yes to that question. But I haven't got 100 hours to win a new client. It's got to be faster. Okay, well, tell me what the process is. Then I'll analyze that process and I'll look at what parts of that we can automate out or inject AI into, so that that 100 hours will definitely yield you one new client will reduce to 1 hour, and 99 hours replaced by automation and AI. And now we're in business, right? Because if we can spend an hour on every client and the technology can do the other 99% of it, then we've got a winner. And we basically produce them with like a prioritized matrix roadmap of the different areas of their business and what the ROI potential is and what the investment would need to be to get to that level of ROI. And we prioritize that list and say, look, here's the first use case. Here's where we think we can unlock the value in your business. Let's focus on that one first. We think we can get you ROI, certainly starting in 30 days. Let's go. And that's it.
Yeah, again, I really like your process-driven approach here, right? Because it's a very clear, logical approach. I can see why that would resonate with CEOs, and particularly with businesses where they're looking at how they can address that ROI. But you being able to come in and talk about this in a very sort of methodical way, I think is very reassuring. I wanted to also kind of ask you about how you're actually delivering the solutions. And you gave us those case studies earlier on, which were great. Are you finding that your advice is more about developing, getting your clients to develop their own solutions, bringing developers in-house, or are there enough solutions out there, SaaS solutions, open source models, that actually a lot of this can be stitched together? There might not be one size fits all, but I'd just be interested to get your perspective on where the solutions are coming from.
Yeah, predominantly our solutions are falling into the camp of we do it for you. So most people just want us to do it for them because the business case is there, because we've shown them what the ROI could be. And they're predominantly falling into the camp, or almost 100% falling into the camp of we are using our knowledge. We keep very, very aware of all what's going on as much as we can in all the different areas, and gluing together different tools, basically orchestrating publicly available tools using things like N8Ns, APM, make.com, things like that as the orchestration typically, gluing together solutions using things like Replit or Lovable as portals, using open source libraries, typically hooking into, OpenAI's library to do prompts. So we'll build complex prompts and break them down into component parts, so we're getting consistent answers through the API interface, and break it down into its constituent parts using that methodical approach, as you say. But yeah, we're not sat there trying to write our own large language model. There's enough amazing technology out there that we can implement into people's businesses if only they knew how to do it themselves. Basically, there's a huge gap, in my opinion, of people's knowledge and even capacity, really. Even if you've got the knowledge, I have the knowledge, but I don't have the capacity to implement some of these solutions into my own business. I'm too busy doing it for my clients. So that's the predominant problem that people have. So yeah, it's largely done for you with gluing together different solutions that are available.
Brilliant. That's really helpful to know. And I think that analogy, it made me think of, back in the day, if you were a marketing agency, then always the websites would look a bit ropey because you were too busy making a marketing website for somebody else, right? But you never had such to do your own. And it's that same sort of approach. But I think what's also kind of really helpful about how you're helping these businesses is that you are becoming the sort of, you're sampling so many different vendors. And having that holistic approach to solving problems for lots of different clients, that you then are able to know which of those vendors, you mentioned a few, which of those vendors are the right ones, how to use them, and then that scales to allow you to kind of bolt all those things together. That's often the big challenge if you are trying to do this in-house, or if you are starting out, is like knowing which of the many thousands, and every week there's new suppliers and tools and SaaSes which are coming out. How do you know where to start with that? Well, actually, if you've got that core sort of kernel of experience and trusted partners, and you can start with that. But how do you cope with knowing what's new? I mean, even within some of those platforms you mentioned, there'll be new versions, there'll be new tools, there'll be new add-ons. How do you stay up with understanding that whole ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I think if people take one thing away from this conversation, Tim, I'd love them to take this away. There'll always be a new tool. AI is as bad as it's ever going to be. It's getting better at an exponential rate. So if you try and keep on top of everything, you're just going to drive yourself mad, basically. And that's why I would always advocate starting with why. Just go back. What is the problem with your business? What problem are you trying to solve? Okay, it's that particular problem. And we've got, sufficient research. We keep on to, we've got feeds, we have RSS feeds, we're heavy on LinkedIn. We've got various different sources that we use to kind of keep ourselves abreast of what's going on. But when we understand the client's problem properly, we obviously dip into the knowledge that we've already got, but then we'll go off and do individual research for that client, using the knowledge we've already got and build on that as we delve deeper into their particular use case. So we've got a base level of understanding of what's out there across different domains. And then as we go to implement a particular use case for a client, we'll go and understand what the best for their use case tool is in particular. And I think because like anything we implement today for a client is very likely going to be significantly obsolete in a relatively short time frame. So part of what we sort of do for our clients is we don't just implement the solution and wave them off and wish them luck. We're there to support them on the journey. So we're charging a relatively modest build cost to get something up and running for them, and then there's an ongoing relationship through support and on updating and tweaking as the technology improves, that will continue to maintain the solution every month. So that's how we're pricing our services, basically.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about whether there's analogies with the way other industries have developed, and going back to thinking about maybe sort of the marketing industry, how that's become similarly. It's not something you can just set up and forget about. It's something you have to kind of constantly be sort of feeding into and updating.
Exactly.
But I think it's quite unique, though, isn't it? The way this AI is developing now, it's because of the speed and because of the complexity of it. So it sounds like you've got that sort of that you'll become very much a trusted partner. And in the same way that probably at an enterprise level, that's existed for quite some time, where you have those trusted partners you rely on and they're engaged in multi-years, you're now bringing that same trusted partner relationship to SMEs.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, it's it's a bit of an overused cliche, but small medium businesses are the backbone of the UK economy, and have been underserved in this area for since the dawn of time. Really, there's lots of other small businesses that try to help, but really, the reason most small businesses, in my mind, stay small is because they don't have access to that sort of level of capability that larger businesses do. And if only more people knew about them, or if only they had the capability to deal with more stuff, then they too could go on that growth curve. We're not short of ideas and innovation. We're kind of short of implementation, really. So, yeah. I hope that in some small way that, and sort of, just kind of from a personal perspective, it's such a buzz to help an individual or a group of individuals who you've got personal relationship with, go on that growth curve. There's nothing more exciting than seeing somebody, when it's their business, their livelihood, their future, helping them sort of go on that journey, rather than perhaps a faceless corporation whose employees you build relationships with and then they move on to the next corporation, a few years later. So yeah, it for me is a much bigger buzz from helping that community.
Amazing. Well, great. Well, I mean, just to wrap things up then, it would be great to understand how we can find out more about the AI pros and stay in touch. And then maybe also what you're most excited for looking ahead in the next year.
Yeah, cool. Well, you can find us on the web, of course, theaipros.co.uk. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Mark Pratt. Quite active on LinkedIn, kind of posting insights on AI most days. Trying to get complete coverage, but not always possible. And yeah, what I'm most excited about for the future is just the wonderful opportunity that enabling kind of small businesses kind of going to bring to the economy. Obviously, it feels a little bit like the economy has been in the doldrums for a little while, and I just hope that the thing that kind of kickstarts it is something positive, like the rapid implementation of kind of some of these new and exciting technologies, rather than something more depressing, like war spreading or whatever, that is also an economic stimulus. But yeah, let's hope it's the former and not the latter. But yeah, I do hope that I can help as many small businesses as we possibly can.
Amazing. Well, Mark, thank you. It's been great to have you on. We've talked about a number of different themes, but I think I really enjoyed hearing about the case studies that you were able to give there about how you're actually applying this, but also that way that you've taken an understanding of how very large organizations have built up these methodologies, and they've been road tested, and you're now bringing those to small and medium businesses to really unlock the potential of those businesses to 100x their efficiency and their productivity. I mean, and that's really powerful. So I really enjoyed talking this through with you. Thanks for joining us today on the Business of AI podcast.
Been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tim.